Today, we're diving into Marathon, Bungie's upcoming sci-fi extraction first-person shooter set to drop on September 23rd. The gameplay reveals sparked serious buzz, but also some criticism. I'm here to tell you why the critics may be wrong about Marathon. First, let's talk about that upfront price tag that has caught some by surprise. It could end up being around $40 like Helldivers 2, another Sony-published multiplayer shooter with extraction elements. Hopefully, it'll come in at under $25 though. Critics are wondering, why isn't Marathon free to play? But hear me out, this upfront cost could be a strength. I might be contrarian in that I think extraction shooters are better off not being free to play since F2P attracts cheaters, which is especially detrimental in an extraction shooter format. There have been several successful recent shooters monetized through a combination of an upfront price and a digital store. Marathon could be successful with a similar model. Now let's address the narrative. Critics are pointing out that Marathon seems narrative light at launch, with a focus on PvPvE gameplay over a deep story or lore. And you know what? That's not a bad thing. Bungie's leaning into what makes extraction shooters shine: intense, player-driven moments. The sparse story, centered on runners, sets a mysterious vibe. This lets you create the narrative through clutch revives, betrayals, or epic loot hauls. A lean story at launch means more room for creating your own narrative, which is what competitive players like myself actually prefer. Also, let's not beat around the bush. The trend in writing at Western game developers has been kind of bad over the last few years. Remember Concord and Hyenas? I don't think Sony wants to take unnecessary chances with a narrative, at least not in the beginning. Before we wrap up, let's cover why the extraction shooter format could be the next big thing in multiplayer FPS after the Battle Royale boom. Battle Royales typically have a long looting phase, which I actually find to be the most boring part of the game. So, extraction shooters can solve that by giving persistence to looting. It gives more meaning to the loot phase since the loot carries over after the game. The loot mechanic also introduces secondary objectives other than just eliminating the other teams. Extraction shooters have a lot of promise since they can be similar to a battle royale, but can present more ways to play the game. Loot adds another dimension to progression and community interaction. Also, the risk of losing loot delivers tension because every match can feel like a gamble. While there are pros to the extraction shooter format, there are also cons that Bungie needs to navigate. For example, extraction shooters can have fairness issues since teams that bring in high-powered loot can have an advantage. Bungie has indicated they are trying to find the right balance. My 2 cents is that they should have multiple game modes, some where players can bring in high-powered loot and others where everyone is on a more level playing field. To solve the balance issue while also reinforcing the loot gameplay loop, in rank mode they could have a requirement in which there is a minimum and maximum level of loot or loadout that must be brought into the game and risk, and this loot or loadout level should escalate with rank. So, why are critics wrong about Marathon? In conclusion, I think an upfront price might be a necessity for an extraction shooter. I actually prefer a light narrative if it means avoiding a Concord-type situation, and the extraction shooter format has a lot of promise, especially if they tilt it toward competitive balance in rank mode. The critics might also be overlooking Bungie's knack for crafting addictive shooters. Is it a risk? Sure, but with a September release, there's time to polish and prove the critics wrong.